Hello, this is Winchester News Podcast, with our guests including today Charlotte Pashley,
Rebecca Pettit-Taylor,
Maeve Corbett,
Jaded Whistler,
and Alexia Pitikas.
Thank you. And now we'll talk about the news today. With the chalk streams in Winchester being impacted by constant construction and pollution, what do you guys think about it?
I honestly didn't really know anything like this was going on until I heard this story. But so what exactly is happening?
So with the chalk streams, they are aquifers, and they get impacted by construction work, which pollutes the rivers and causes many of the ecosystems to die out and impact the flora of the river itself. So it's really important to consider construction work when building around chalk streams.
Is there any kind of link between this and we had lots of news stories last year where there was pollution in our seas? Is there any link at all?
So it is one of the issues. There's many industries still dumping waste into these rivers, which will then impact these ecosystems. When it comes to Winchester itself, I would say probably not as much, but probably around near Southampton, where the River Itchen ends, it will definitely, any industry dumping will definitely impact these chalk streams, definitely.
Is there anything else we can do to help the cause, except for obviously maybe boycotting construction work around? Is there anything else we can do to help the wildlife?
I would say making sure that organisations are accountable and making sure to kind of take part, fundraise, volunteer with cleaning up these chalk streams, as well as probably helping with the councils, encouraging councils to look after these chalk streams as well. That's really important.
Yeah, that's absolutely important actually, and I haven't really heard people talk about it, so it's nice that you decided to do a social media story on it. I feel like especially being on social media, it will attract younger people and they will get a general idea of what actually happens to the rivers in England and everything.
It was really nice to film, to be honest, because we got the River Itchen that runs through Winchester itself, so it was nice and easy. I did almost fall in, but we don't talk about that. But yeah, so how was your guys' news that you gathered?
Well, I can tell you a bit about one of mine if you want. So one of them was about football in Spain. Basically, the former president of the Spanish Association had to go to court because he was charged with sexual assault, and he was also being accused of, I'm not sure how you say it in English, but basically trying to convince Jenny Hermoso, who was the victim of the sexual assault, to say that it wasn't true and that it hadn't actually happened without consent. But he's just now being found guilty of sexual assault, but it's been said that he's not guilty of trying to convince her to say that stuff. But yeah, so he has to pay almost £9,000, I think it is.
And that's not enough if you ask me.
Yeah, exactly. Most people, so for my social media story, I went to talk with the university's football women's team, and most of them knew about the story and everything because, well, they watched the World Cup, and they all thought it was not a reasonable amount to pay, and they all thought he should either pay more or actually have gone to jail at least for a few months. And they also think that if it had been like roles reversed or stuff like that, it would have been completely different. Or if it was in like lower leagues, it wouldn't have even gone to court.
Probably.
Because it wouldn't get the media attention that this got. So it would be completely different.
One of my questions I have about the story is, how do you feel this case has had an impact on women in general? Like, do you feel like a lot of people have a greater understanding of these issues and about football more?
Yeah. Well, mainly I think it just made women feel like, oh, they were trying to discredit her even though she didn't consent to it.
Yeah.
Because like, oh, they were like, she was still celebrating after, she seemed fine, blah, blah, blah. But I mean, yeah, she's happy because she just won the World Cup for the first time for her country. She's tried to make it so that kiss without consent didn't affect her that much. But if you watch the documentary about it, you can see how she tried to talk to her colleagues on that about it, but everyone was so excited about winning the World Cup that she felt like that wasn't really what she should be doing in that moment. But yeah, at the end she obviously spoke up and she's gotten kind of more or less a bit of justice at least.
Yeah. Do you think women's football will change for the better because of this case, like in the sense of how it approaches these issues?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely getting a lot more attention now. Personally, I hope it's more because, at least in Spain, because we won the World Cup and not because of everything that happened apart from that.
Yeah.
But this definitely did bring a lot of attention to women's football. And like, for example, in my town now, there's like more than one women's team and stuff like that. That when I was younger, I had to play on the boys' team at least.
Yeah.
Because there was no women's team. So yeah, I think it definitely brought more attention to it.
I'd like to ask one thing, kind of to everyone. We've had almost a rise in these big, high-profile cases with sexual assault and sexual harassment. So we've had Giselle Petitcot and we've had Blake Lively came forward with her own accusations. And I wonder, as journalism students, we learn kind of the victims of sexual harassment and sexual assault, they are to stay private unless they themselves come forward. And what do we think about the idea that we've actually seen it happen now on screen for everyone to see? And do we think that kind of invades her privacy in a very strange way that we wouldn't have been able to do before media?
I mean, I do think it does really make like people feel comfortable talking about it, and sometimes it is an invasion of privacy. But I do also think seeing all this like big figures in like football and acting and stuff like that actually come out with their stories and being brave enough to actually talk about it, it does make other people feel the courage to be able to speak about it and not be silent about it.
Almost like the Me Too movement.
Yeah.
Maeve, could you tell us a little bit about your story?
Yeah, so Northern Ireland's First Minister Michelle O'Neill and kind of her wider party Sinn Féin, they've come out saying that they're going to boycott the White House. So specifically this time of year, we're coming up to St. Patrick's Day next month. And traditionally, there is sort of a very big celebration held at the White House. But because of what Trump has been saying about specifically Gaza and Palestine, he's wants to turn it into the Riviera of the Middle East, and he wants control of it turned over to America. They have decided to boycott it, and a lot of people have been, saying that it will damage relations. But she has said that when her children and grandchildren ask what she did during this time, she said, and I quote, she will be able to say she stood firmly on the side of humanity.
Yeah, I feel like that's really powerful. It's really interesting. Do you think that maybe if European leaders were to take a similar stance, maybe Donald Trump would slow down?
Yes, I think, arguably it could send quite a big message if a lot of his Western European allies start calling him out on different things. Yeah. He's been very accusatory towards Volodymyr Zelensky, calling him a dictator. And it could, in the future, very much harm Ukraine. And I think different attitudes that he has need to be taken a lot more seriously than they are. Labour is being quite, they're bending the knee a bit to him. And to an extent, I understand. There's definitely financial difficulties will come if we break up with America.
And not only that, but I feel like he's quite unpredictable. So maybe if you were to boycott or just something that could upset him, I don't think he'd be really peaceful about it, you know?
And
I think he'd definitely retaliate.
There's an Irish radio show called News Talk, and a lot of the people calling in talking about this subject were worried that we would like irreparably break the relationship we have with the US. And they think that while we should, you know, talk calmly with Donald Trump and his advisors about specific stances he holds, we shouldn't immediately boycott him. And I do think it's so controversial. You know, the DUP leader, so the opposition in Northern Ireland, he said it was a way to win votes and it was reckless. And who knows how he will react when it comes to them not showing up.
I think it also depends on who you ask. Some people may say, yeah, boycott him. And then you have other parties being like, absolutely not. We need him. We like what he's doing. We agree. So it's really, I feel like the world should take kind of like a centrist stance where they should try and resonate with both sides, because otherwise I don't think they'd be able to come to a common ground.
And I think it's around a third of the UK hold Donald Trump in a positive stance.
Wow,
so
I had no idea.
There's quite a big group of people that do not see anything wrong with, you know, for example, how he talks about Ukraine and Zelensky, or how he talks about Gaza and the people there, how he talks about, for example, the Gulf of Mexico, now renamed as the Gulf of America.
Yeah, that's absolutely ridiculous, but okay.
And I do think there is a point where if people let him go too far, where do you put the foot down?
Yeah, that is true.
Yeah. Thank you, Maeve. Alexia, could you tell us your news today?
Absolutely, yes. I actually did a follow-up story on a story I did in October last year.
Yeah.
So the European Union,
It's okay.
has introduced a travel authorization for non-EU citizens. Actually, they've been talking about it. It's set to be implemented towards the end of 2025. But it's set into place. Like, we know it's going to be a thing. And yeah, I think it's really, I don't know.
Is this on top of tourist tax then? So sometimes when you go to hotels, there'll be percentages.
Yeah, absolutely. It has nothing to do. I think this authorization is mainly for the European Union, the European Economic Area, the Schengen area. So just all of the countries that are part of these unions. If you also have to pay a tourist tax separately, that's basically dependent on whichever country's government. They decide that. And like I said, they first want to introduce an entry-exit system, which is basically a digital border. And what this digital border means is that people who enter the Schengen area from a country that's not in the Schengen area, which UK isn't, they're going to have to record their visit. And there's a lot of things you have to do. First of all, get your fingerprints taken, passport photo. So it's quite a difficult thing to do, which people haven't have to do in the past. So, and I think what the UK is doing, obviously they've been talking about this ever since they left the European Union, is maybe not in retaliation, but it's just they are introducing a visa waiver for those who are non-UK citizens. And it's actually, they've given a proper date, is set to start on the 2nd of April 2025, and people can begin to apply from 5th of March 2025, so that's like next week. And basically what this visa means, it gives you the right to stay there in the UK for 6 months, and that's basically it. If you ask me, it's quite expensive.
Yeah, sounds it.
Because, for example, if you want to visit the European Union, you only have to pay €7 for the entire union of countries. Whereas if you want to visit the UK, if you want a visa for the UK, you have to pay £10 for one country, you know, so.
Thank you, Alexia. Jade, your story.
Yes, so this week I did a bit of a fluffier story than I'm used to. So I went down to Basingstoke, where the War Memorial Park has been lit up in lights. It's quite an exciting event. It's had this walkthrough. They focused on accessibility, but something they also really pressed for was sustainability this year. So they used LEDs, which are 90% more efficient than the traditional bulbs they've used in previous years, which I thought was really interesting, as they said that one of their pledges in previous years was to do this, but they didn't quite implement it in time. They've also stated that there's also clear paths to prevent destruction for plants and potential habitats. And the event organisers Love Basingstoke have also claimed that the installation consists of expert lighting designed at not disrupting individuals in habitats.
So, who hosted the event, Jade? Sounds like something charitable, right?
Not quite. It was set up by #Love Basingstoke. So they're a group made up of representatives from Basingstoke and Dean Borough Council. They also consist of people from Festival Place and other similar organisations. They manage the Love Basingstoke website and the social media accounts, as well as aiming to include and encourage people to both enjoy outdoor spaces and support more local businesses.
As a Basingstoke local, I can kind of talk about this in great detail. But the outdoor spaces there are not great. They're very not green. If you go to, for example, Victory Park, or King George, I think it's 4th or 5th. There's hardly anything there for children, for dog walkers. It's just essentially slabs of concrete within grass. So do you know if there's any plans for them to, reintroduce wild flowers or trees into these spaces?
See, that's the thing. Last year, the council said that their initiative would include such, but as of yet, we've not seen this implemented. So we're hoping that soon they'll announce something, but I do agree, Basingstoke's green spaces aren't exactly as green as you think they may be. And although it's great, there's wheelchair access, and they've done designated areas for wildlife, I do think they could definitely do more, and residents are also echoing this, with a letter being written to the council as we speak.
Yeah, that sounds, like they need a lot of work that needs to be done.
Do you think maybe neighbouring cities would take the same initiative, maybe like Southampton or Winchester?
Well, potentially. One of the questions is the fact of, although that the light exhibition was there to literally shed light on the fact that there's green spaces, I think Winchester already has a lot more green spaces, but the council seems to not be putting a lot of money towards that. Their sustainability efforts, as I spoke about a few weeks ago, is mainly aimed at transport and finding more sustainability there. But I agree, I do think that neighbouring cities like Winchester and other areas could do a lot more. I think this is also echoed by residents. There's a lot of petitions going around online, if you check, surrounding green spaces and surrounding sustainability overall in cities like Winchester.
Thank you. This has been Winchester News Online podcast.